Chapter 1. The night she stopped running, Thrain had followed her for 3 days. It drummed against the cobblestones of the old district, turning the narrow streets into rivers of shadow and lamplight. Alara didn't mind. Rain meant fewer people asking questions. Rain meant she could disappear into the gray fold of the city and pretend, for a little while, that she was no one at all. She pulled her coat tighter and kept her head down as she crossed the bridge. Beneath her, the river churned black and restless. Above, the sky hung low and bruised. This part of the city, the old quarter, where the buildings leaned into each other like conspirators, was where people came when they had nowhere else to go. She'd been here a week now, sleeping in a boarding house that didn't ask for references and didn't care about the hollow look in her eyes. It was better than home. Better than the wreckage she'd left behind. Her apartment was tucked into a crooked building at the end of a forgotten alley. She climbed the stairs slowly, her boots leaving wet prints on the warped wood. The landlady had warned her about the neighborhood. Not safe after dark, she'd said, though she hadn't elaborated. Alara hadn't asked. She'd learned that some warnings were better left unexplored. Inside, the room was small and cold. A single window overlooked the alley. A bed, a table, a chair. It was enough. She set her bag down and shrugged out of her coat, hanging it on the hook by the door. Her hands were shaking. They'd been shaking for weeks now, ever since the night Thomas had looked at her with those cold, assessing eyes and told her he'd found someone else. Someone better. Someone who didn't carry the weight of grief like a second skin. She'd left the next morning. No note, no explanation. Just the sound of the door closing behind her. Alara crossed to the window and pressed her forehead against the glass. The alley below was empty. The rain hissed against the pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled midnight. That was when she saw him. He stood at the mouth of the alley, half hidden in shadow, tall, still. His coat was dark, his hair darker. He wasn't moving, but there was something about the way he held himself, coiled, deliberate, that made her breath catch. She stepped back from the window. Her pulse kicked up. Just someone passing through, she told herself. Just a stranger. But he wasn't passing through. He was looking up. At her window. At her. Alara's stomach dropped. She reached for the latch, meaning to close the curtain, but before she could move, the man tilted his head, just slightly, as if he'd heard her heartbeat through the glass. Then he smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. She stumbled backward, her hip catching the edge of the table. The candle flickered. For a moment, the room plunged into darkness, and when the light steadied again, the alley was empty. Alara stood frozen, her breath shallow. You're imagining things, she thought. You're exhausted. The knock came before she could finish the thought. 3 deliberate raps against the door. Her heart slammed into her ribs. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The knock came again. Slower this time. Patient, Miss Thorne. The voice was low, smooth, and far too close. I know you're in there. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to slow her pulse. I don't know you. Not yet. A pause. But you will. Go away. I'm afraid I can't do that. He sounded almost apologetic. You've been marked. The words sent ice down her spine. What? 3 nights ago, you crossed through the market square. You stopped to help a woman who'd fallen. An old woman with a red shawl. Alara's mind raced. She had stopped. The woman had been frail, disoriented. Alara had helped her to a bench, made sure she was steady before moving on. It had been nothing. A moment of kindness in a city that offered so few. She wasn't what she seemed, the man continued. And now, neither are you. Alara's hand moved to the knife she kept in her pocket. It was small, dull, probably useless, but it was something. I don't understand. Open the door, Miss Thorne, or they'll come for you before dawn, and I won't be able to stop them. The Nightborn house. His voice hardened. They don't forgive trespasses, and you've been breathing their air. She didn't know what that meant, didn't want to know. But the certainty in his voice, the quiet, terrible certainty, made her fingers close around the doorknob. She opened it. He was taller than she'd expected, pale in a way that wasn't sickly, but otherworldly, as if the moonlight had gotten into his bones and refused to leave. His eyes were dark, so dark she couldn't tell where the pupil ended and the iris began. He looked at her the way a predator might study prey, with focus, calculation, and something disturbingly close to respect. You're bleeding, he said. She blinked. Looked down. Her palm was cut a thin line of red where she'd caught it on the table. She hadn't even felt it. He took a step forward. She took one back. Don't. she whispered. He stopped. His gaze flicked to the blood, then back to her face. For a moment, something raw and ancient flickered in his expression. Hunger, and beneath it, restraint so fierce it looked like pain. Pack a bag, he said quietly. We're leaving. I'm not going anywhere with you. Then you'll be dead by morning. He turned toward the stairs. Your choice, Miss Thorne. But make it quickly. She stood there, knife in hand, heart hammering, as his footsteps echoed down into the dark. And then, without understanding why, she reached for her bag. Chapter 2. The House of Shadow. She followed him into the rain. It was insanity. Ilara knew that even as she locked her door and descended the narrow staircase, bag clutched against her chest. Every rational thought screamed at her to turn back, to barricade herself inside and wait for morning. But the way he'd looked at her, blood, the hunger and the restraint warring in those impossible eyes had told her something worse than madness waited in that room. He stood at the end of the alley, a dark figure beneath the broken street lamp. When she approached, he didn't speak. He simply turned and began walking. The streets were empty. The rain had driven everyone inside, leaving only the sound of water on stone and the distant rumble of thunder. Ilara's boots splashed through puddles as she struggled to keep pace. He moved like shadow given form, fluid, silent, inhuman. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere they won't look. Not immediately. Who won't look? He glanced back at her. In the lamplight, his face was all sharp angles and controlled violence. The ones who marked you, the Nightborn bloodline. He paused. They're not forgiving. And they don't negotiate. I don't understand any of this. Her voice cracked. That woman, I just helped her. That's all. You touched her. He turned down a side street, leading her deeper into the old quarter. Skin to skin. She was dying, Miss Thorne, 300 years old and finally fading. Her house was waiting for the blood to break, for her lineage to return to the earth. His jaw tightened. You interrupted that process. How? You have a gift. He said it like a diagnosis. Most humans can't feel it, but some very few carry warmth that extends beyond the physical. Life force, vitality. He stopped walking and turned to face her fully. You gave her enough to last another week, maybe two. And in doing so, you've delayed a succession war that 3 houses have been preparing for over a century. Alar's head spun. That's impossible. You're standing in the rain with a stranger who moves too fast and doesn't blink enough, he said quietly. Impossible. Stopped applying the moment you opened your door. She wanted to argue, wanted to run, but he was right. What do they want with me? To kill you, publicly. He resumed walking. To send a message that mortal interference in house business won't be tolerated. The old laws are very clear about that. And you? She had to half run to keep up. Why are you helping me? He didn't answer immediately. They'd reached a section of the city she didn't recognize, older buildings, some half collapsed, their windows dark and watching. He stopped before a townhouse that looked abandoned. Its iron gate rusted and hanging loose. Because, he said finally, pushing the gate open, I have questions that only you can answer. The house was larger inside than it appeared. The entry hall stretched into shadow, lit only by the faint glow of something that wasn't quite firelight. The air smelled of old paper and colder things, stone and time and secrets kept too long. Alara hesitated at the threshold. You're safe here, he said, though he didn't look at her. This house doesn't belong to any of the ruling bloodlines. It's neutral ground. Neutral, she repeated. You keep talking about houses and bloodlines. What are you? He closed the door behind them. The sound echoed. When he turned, his face was carefully blank. What do you think I am? She thought of the way he'd looked at her, blood, the inhuman stillness, the way the shadows seemed to cling to him like old friends. Vampire? She whispered. He smiled. It was tired. Yes. The word settled between them like a stone dropping into dark water. Alar's grip tightened on her bag. Part of her had known some animal instinct had recognized the predator in him, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that terrified her. I won't hurt you, he added. His voice was softer now. I haven't fed from an unwilling human into centuries. And I won't start with you. Unwilling, she echoed. You say that like there are people who there are. He moved past her, deeper into the house. The old ways required consent. Always, blood taken by force is poisoned. It burns. Most of us learned that lesson young. She followed him into what appeared to be a library. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling. A fire burned low in the hearth, real fire this time, warm and crackling. He gestured toward a chair near the flames. Sit, you're shaking. She was. She hadn't noticed. Elara sank into the chair, her wet clothes clinging to her skin. He moved to a cabinet and returned with a blanket, which he draped over her shoulders without meeting her eyes. Why do you care? She asked. If I'm going to die anyway, you're not going to die. He said it with absolute certainty. Not if you stay here. Not if you follow my instructions. And what exactly are your instructions? He crouched before the fire, his profile sharp in the flickering light. Don't leave this house. Don't go near windows after dark. Don't invite anyone inside, no matter who they claim to be. He paused. And don't trust anything that tells you I'm your enemy. Should I trust you? His smile was brief and humorless. Probably not, but you don't have better options. Elara pulled the blanket tighter. Her mind was still reeling, trying to process everything: vampires, houses, blood laws, the impossible reality of the man sitting 3 feet away from her. What's your name? She asked. He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible over the fire. Castian. Castian Mornshadow. Of the Mornshadow line. He looked at her then, his dark eyes reflecting flames. And I was king of the northern houses before I walked away. Thunder rolled overhead. The fire hissed. And Elara realized she'd traded one kind of danger for something far more complicated. Why did you walk away? She whispered. His expression shuddered. That, he said quietly, is a story for another night. Chapter 3. Questions in the dark. She didn't sleep. Castian had shown her to a room on the 2nd floor, small but clean, with a 4-poster bed and curtains that blocked out the gray dawn. He'd left her with a pitcher of water, a change of clothes that fit surprisingly well, and instructions not to open the door for anyone but him. Then he'd disappeared. Elara sat on the edge of the bed, still wrapped in the blanket, and watched the shadows shift across the ceiling. Every creak of the old house made her flinch. Every distant sound, wind, rain, something moving in the walls sent her pulse racing. Vampires. The word felt absurd even now, like something from the Gothic novels she'd read as a girl, full of melodrama and impossible romance. But those stories had never mentioned the cold calculation in a predator's eyes, or the way blood called to them like a song only they could hear. She touched the cut on her palm. It had stopped bleeding hours ago, but the thin red line remained. Such a small thing. And yet it had set all of this in motion. When the knock finally came, she nearly jumped out of her skin. Miss Thorne. Castian's voice filtered through the door. May I come in? She almost laughed at the formality. It's your house. It's your room. A pause. Consent matters. Even in small things. Something about that, the careful respect in his tone, made her throat tight. Come in. He entered slowly, carrying a tray. On it, tea, bread, cheese, and something that looked like honeyed fruit. He set it on the small table near the window, his movements precise and economical. You need to eat, he said. Humans often forget when they're afraid. I'm not hungry. You will be. He gestured to the chair. Please. Elara stood reluctantly and crossed to the table. The food smelled better than she wanted to admit. She picked up a piece of bread and forced herself to take a bite. It was good, fresh. She hadn't realized how long it had been since she'd eaten anything that wasn't stale or cold. Castian remained standing, his back to the wall, watching her with that unnerving stillness. Do you ever blink? She asked. His mouth twitched. Almost a smile. When I remember to. How old are you? 473 years. He said it the way someone might mention the weather. Give or take a decade. Time becomes imprecise after the 1st century. She set the bread down. And you were a king. I was. His expression darkened. For 200 years, I held the northern houses together, maintained the treaties, enforced the old laws. He looked away. And then I didn't. Why? Because ruling requires compromises I was no longer willing to make. His voice went quiet. Because I watched people I cared about become monsters in the name of tradition. Because immortality without purpose is just a longer way to die. The raw honesty in his words startled her. She'd expected arrogance, distance, the cold authority of someone who'd commanded kingdoms. Instead, he sounded exhausted, ancient and tired and alone. So you just left? I abdicated, walked out of the night court and didn't look back. He met her eyes. That was 50 years ago. Most of the houses consider me either dead or irrelevant, which is why this house still stands. Why, they haven't found you yet, but they will find me, eventually. He moved to the window, careful to stay in shadow. Outside, dawn was breaking weak and gray. The Nightborn house has trackers, good ones. They'll follow the scent of your gift through the city until they narrow down your location. He glanced back at her. We have 3 days, maybe 4. And then we negotiate, or we run. Or he stopped himself. Or what? His jaw tightened. Or I challenge House Nightborn's claim and invoke an older law. One that hasn't been used in centuries. Alara's pulse quickened. What law? Blood oath. The words sounded like a curse. If I claim you as House Mornshadow as my responsibility, they can't touch you without declaring war on my entire bloodline. But you said you abdicated. I did. But blood doesn't forget. The oath would still hold. He turned fully to face her. The problem is, it would also bind you to me, to my protection, for as long as you live. The weight of that settled over her. You mean I'd belong to you? No, he said it sharply. You'd be under my house's protection. There's a difference. You'd have autonomy, rights, the ability to refuse. His expression softened. But yes, you'd be tied to the vampire world, to our laws, our conflicts, our enemies. And if I refuse, then we run. I get you out of the city, out of the territory, find you somewhere remote where the houses don't have reach. He paused. But they'd never stop looking. And you'd spend the rest of your life hiding. Alara wrapped her arms around herself. Both options felt like cages. Different shapes, same bars. Why are you doing this? She asked. You don't know me. I'm nobody. Castian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. You remind me of someone. Someone I failed to protect, a long time ago. He looked down at his hands, pale, elegant, marked with scars she hadn't noticed before. And perhaps I'm tired of failing. The vulnerability in his admission made something ache in her chest. She thought of Thomas, of the way he'd looked at her, like she was a burden, like her grief made her less. This stranger, this vampire, was offering her protection without demanding she be anything other than what she was. I need time, she said quietly. To think, of course. He moved toward the door. Rest. I'll wake you before sunset. We'll talk more then. Castian? He paused, his hand on the doorframe. Thank you, she said, for not lying to me. His smile was sad. I've spent enough of my life lying, Miss Thorne. I'm trying to remember what honesty feels like. Then he was gone, and she was alone with the dawn and the impossible choices ahead. Chapter 4. The weight of secrets woke to darkness and the smell of old books. For a disorienting moment, Alara thought she was back in her childhood home, her father's study, where she'd spent countless hours reading by candlelight while he worked at his desk. Then memory crashed back. The rain, the stranger, the impossible truth spoken beside a dying fire. Vampires. She sat up slowly, her body aching from tension she hadn't released even in sleep. The room was dim, lit only by a single candle on the bedside table. Beyond the curtains, night had fallen completely. The knock came soft and deliberate. Miss Thorne? Are you awake? She recognized the voice immediately, though it was different now, rougher, as if speaking cost him something. Yes, Castian entered, and she understood why his voice had changed. He looked diminished. His skin was paler than before, almost translucent in the candlelight. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He moved carefully, like someone navigating pain. What's wrong? The question escaped before she could stop it. Nothing, that won't pass. He set down another tray, soup this time. Bread, tea. His hands shook slightly. I haven't fed in several days. It makes the nights difficult. Alara's stomach twisted. You should eat, feed, whatever you need to do. I will, later. He gestured to the food. You first. She wanted to argue, but something in his expression, stubborn, protective, barely holding himself together, stopped her. She moved to the table and picked up the soup. It was rich and warming, herbs she couldn't name, mixed with vegetables and tender meat. Did you make this? She asked. I remember how. A ghost of a smile. From before. When I was human. The admission startled her. She'd been so focused on what he was now that she'd forgotten he'd once been something else. Someone else. What was it like, being human? He lowered himself into the chair across from her, moving like his bones hurt. Bright, brief, terrifying in different ways. He stared at the candle flame. I was 26 when I was turned. A soldier in a war I barely understood. I died in a field hospital, infection spreading through a wound that wouldn't close. His voice went distant. She found me there. The woman who would become my maker. She said I fought death so hard she couldn't help but offer me another option. Do you regret it? Some days. He met her eyes. Most days. I don't know. Immortality is complicated. You gain time but lose context. Everyone you love dies. Every place you know changes until you're a stranger in your own history. He paused. But you also witness beauty that mortals never see. Patience becomes possible. And loneliness becomes a skill you master, or it destroys you. Alara set down her spoon. Which one are you? Mastered or destroyed? His laugh was bitter. Still deciding, they sat in silence for a moment, the weight of centuries pressing down between them. She thought about her own life, 28 years of joy and grief compressed into a handful of memories. Her father's death, her mother's slow decline, Thomas's betrayal. It felt both infinite and impossibly small compared to the expanse of time Castian carried. The woman I reminded you of, she said quietly. What happened to her? His expression shuddered immediately. That's not a story for tonight. You said I should trust you. Trust requires knowing who you are. You know enough. I know you were a king who walked away. I know you're helping me for reasons you won't fully explain. I know you're starving yourself rather than, she stopped. Rather than what? Going out and feeding? Rather than risking exposure. His voice hardened. The moment I hunt, I leave traces, scent, energy. The other houses monitor feeding patterns in this city. If they detect me active again, they'll know I'm harboring something valuable. Me, you. The candle flickered. Outside, rain had started again, a soft percussion against the windows. Alara wrapped her hands around her teacup, feeling the warmth seep into her palms. There has to be another way, she said. You can't just not feed. I can manage a few more days. And then? He didn't answer. Alara's mind raced through possibilities, each more impossible than the last. Finally, she said, what about me? His head snapped up. No, you said blood freely given isn't poisoned. That consent makes it safe. Absolutely not. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against wood. You don't understand what you're offering. Then explain it to me. Feeding creates a connection, a temporary bond. I would feel your emotions, your fears, he stopped himself, jaw clenched. It's intimate in ways that have nothing to do with desire. And I won't take that from you when you're already vulnerable. What if I'm offering it freely? Why? The word came out raw. Why would you do that? Because you're protecting me. She stood to face him. Because you could have turned me over to these houses, used me as a bargaining chip to get back whatever power you walked away from. But you didn't. Her voice softened. Because I've spent the last month believing I was worthless. And you're the first person in a very long time who's treated me like I matter. Something cracked in his expression, surprise, pain, something dangerously close to hope. You matter far more than you know. Alara Thorne. It was the first time he'd used her given name. It sounded different in his accent, older, weighted with meaning she couldn't parse. Then let me help, she said. Let me be more than just someone you're protecting. He stared at her for a long moment, conflict warring across his features. Finally, he shook his head. Not tonight. Not when I'm weak and you're still processing everything. He moved toward the door. But I'll consider it. Castian? He paused without turning. The woman you failed, Alara said quietly. I'm not her. Whatever happened, it wasn't my story. His shoulders tensed. I know. Do you? Silence. Then, I'm trying to. He left, and Alara stood alone in the candlelight, wondering what it meant that a vampire king was more afraid of intimacy than he was of starving. Chapter 5. When House's Khalidi the attack came at midnight, Alara woke to the sound of glass shattering somewhere below. For a heartbeat, she lay frozen, her mind struggling to separate dream from reality. Then she heard Castian's voice, sharp, commanding, inhuman in its fury. Stay in your room. She threw off the blankets and ran to the door, her bare feet cold against the wooden floor. Her hand was on the knob when the entire house shuddered. Something heavy hit the wall downstairs. Wood splintered. A voice she didn't recognize laughed high and cruel and wrong. Still playing protector, Mornshadow? How terribly noble of you. Alara's blood turned to ice. She pressed her ear against the door, trying to understand what was happening. Leave. Castian's voice was lethal. This house is sovereign ground. You have no claim here. The girl carries Nightborn's mark. A different voice, this time older, measured. She interfered with the bloodline succession. House law demands recompense, then take it up with the night court. The court is a relic. We don't need their permission to reclaim what's ours. The sound of movement too fast to be human. Something crashed. Elara heard Castian snarl, a sound no human throat could make. Then silence. Terrible, weighted silence. She couldn't stay hidden. Not while he fought alone. Not when this was happening because of her. Elara grabbed the iron candlestick from the bedside table and eased the door open. The hallway was dark, but she could see flickering light from the stairwell, not firelight. Something colder, blue-white and pulsing. She crept forward, keeping close to the wall. At the top of the stairs, she finally saw them. 3 figures stood in the entry hall. 2 men and a woman, all dressed in dark formal wear that looked centuries out of date. Their skin was pale as bone, their eyes reflecting light like mirrors. Vampires. But where Castian carried his predatory nature with restraint, these 3 radiated hunger and arrogance. Castian stood between them and the staircase. He was bleeding, dark blood seeping from a wound on his shoulder. His coat was torn, his hair disheveled, but his stance was steady, protective. A king defending his territory. She's mortal, he said, his voice tight with pain. Ignorant of our laws. Killing her serves no purpose except cruelty. The woman tilted her head. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Sharp features, crimson lips, eyes like frozen honey. Cruelty has its place. It reminds lesser creatures not to interfere with their betters. She didn't interfere. She showed kindness to a dying woman. That's not a crime. It is when that dying woman was Lady Serafini Nightborn. The older male stepped forward. He wore spectacles and affectation. Elara realized, since vampires didn't need them. The matriarch was meant to pass 3 days ago. Her blood was meant to return to the earth, her house to end her mourning. Instead, your pet extended her suffering. Do you know how many alliances shifted in those 3 extra days? How many treaties collapsed? Castian's hands clenched into fists. That's not her fault. Intention is irrelevant. Impact is all that matters. The man adjusted his spectacles. Surrender her, mourn Shadow, or we'll take her through you. Then you'll have to go through me. The younger male, barely more than a boy in appearance, though his eyes were ancient, smiled. We were hoping you'd say that. They moved simultaneously. Elara didn't see the details. Everything happened too fast. Bodies colliding. The sound of flesh hitting stone. Castian fought with brutal efficiency, but he was outnumbered and weakened. The woman got behind him, her hand closing on his throat. The boy drove him back against the wall. The older man turned toward the stairs. Toward Elara. There you are, he said pleasantly. Why don't you come down and make this easier on everyone? Her grip tightened on the candlestick. No, he laughed. How delightfully stubborn. I see why he likes you. He started up the stairs. Elara's mind raced. She wasn't strong enough to fight him, wasn't fast enough to run. But she remembered what Castian had said. The old ways required consent. Blood taken by force is poisoned. If you kill me, she said loudly, you'll never get what you want. The vampire paused. Behind him, the fight continued. Castian was losing ground, blood streaming from multiple wounds. And what do we want? The man asked. Retribution. A message. Her voice shook but held. Killing me quietly in a forgotten house sends no message. No one will know. No one will care. His eyes narrowed. Go on. But if you take me before the night court, if you make an example of me publicly, then every human in this city will know the cost of interfering with vampire business. She forced herself to meet his gaze. Isn't that worth more than a quick death? Silence. The woman released Castian, who sagged against the wall, breathing hard. All 3 vampires were staring at her now. Clever, the woman murmured. She's buying time, perhaps. The older vampire smiled. Or perhaps she's right. A public trial would certainly reinforce house authority. He glanced at Castian. What do you think, fallen king? Should we grant your pet her theatrical ending? Castian's eyes met Elara's. She saw fury there, and fear, and something else, grudging respect. He understood what she was doing. She'd bought them time, but she'd also painted herself into a corner. The court won't convene for 3 days, Castian said through gritted teeth. If you're invoking formal trial, you have to wait 3 days, the vampire agreed. But the girl comes with us. Insurance. No, those are our terms. The woman's smile was razor sharp. Accept them, or we finish this now. Castian looked at Elara. Blood dripped from his chin. His hands were shaking. She saw the calculation in his eyes, the impossible mathematics of survival. It's okay, she said softly. I'll go. Alara, 3 days, she interrupted. You'll find a way. She didn't believe it. But she needed him too. The older vampire ascended the stairs and took her arm, his grip gentle but unbreakable. How wonderfully dramatic. The mortal girl sacrificing herself. He leaned close. I do hope you survive long enough to regret it. They took her into the rain, and Castian's roar of fury followed her into the dark. Chapter 6. The blood pact. They brought her to a mansion that looked like it had been carved from midnight itself. The Nightborn estate rose from the oldest part of the city, its black stone walls slick with rain. Iron gates opened soundlessly as they approached, and Alara felt the temperature drop as they crossed the threshold. This wasn't just cold, it was the absence of warmth. As if the place had forgotten what sunlight felt like, the older vampire he'd introduced himself as Dorian Ashcroft. House Nightborn's seneschal led her through corridors lined with portraits. Faces stared down at her, all pale and beautiful and dead. Centuries of vampires watching her with painted eyes. You'll stay in the East Wing, Dorian said, his tone conversational, as if she were a guest rather than a prisoner. Comfortable rooms. Food will be provided. You'll want to rest. The trial will be taxing. What exactly happens at a trial? Alara's voice sounded small in the vast hallway. Oh, it's quite formal. House representatives present their grievances. Evidence is examined. The accused, that would be you, offers defense. He glanced back at her, his spectacles catching the lamplight. Then the court decides whether you live or die. Democracy at its finest. And if I'm found guilty, then you'll be executed publicly. Your blood returned to the earth as payment for the blood you stole. He said it the way someone might discuss dinner plans. Though between you and me, the outcome is largely predetermined. House Nightborn wants retribution, and they have considerable influence. They stopped before a heavy wooden door. Dorian opened it, revealing a room that was far too luxurious for a cell. A 4-poster bed draped in midnight blue. A fireplace. Windows with iron bars disguised as decorative scrollwork. Make yourself comfortable, he said. Someone will bring food shortly. I wouldn't recommend trying to escape. The grounds are monitored, and we have hounds that can track human scent for miles. Why are you telling me this? He smiled. Because I appreciate intelligence, Miss Thorne. You were clever back at Mornshadow's house. Quick thinking. Most mortals would have simply cowered. He adjusted his spectacles. It would be a shame to waste such potential. Then let me go. But that would undermine house authority. And authority is all we have, really. Without it, we're just monsters pretending at civilization. He moved toward the door. 3 days, Miss Thorne. Use them wisely. He left, and she heard the lock click into place. Alara stood in the center of the room, her mind racing. 3 days. Castian was wounded, possibly dying. She was trapped in a house full of vampires who wanted her dead. And somehow, she needed to find a way to survive a trial designed to execute her. She moved to the window and looked out. The grounds stretched below, gardens gone wild, statuary covered in moss, a wall to hide a scale. In the distance, she could see the city lights, warm and alive, unreachable. The knock startled her. Before she could respond, the door opened and a young woman entered carrying a tray. She was human. Alara could tell by the flush in her cheeks, the rhythm of her breathing. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Recognition, fear, solidarity, food, the woman said quietly, setting the tray on the table. Then, even more quietly, don't drink the wine. What? The food is safe. The wine isn't. She moved to the fire, adjusting logs that didn't need adjusting. They put something in it. Makes you drowsy. Compliant. Why are you helping me? The woman glanced toward the door, then back. Because I was where you are. 3 years ago. Different circumstances but same outcome. Trapped. Marked for death. She straightened. Someone helped me. I'm returning the favor. What's your name? Better if you don't know. She moved toward the door, then paused. There's a loose stone. 3rd row from the floor, behind the left bedpost. Someone carved a message there once. Might be useful. Then she was gone. Alara waited until her footsteps faded before crossing to the bed. She knelt and felt along the wall, fingers searching. There a stone that shifted slightly under pressure. She worked it free carefully, revealing a hollow space behind. Inside was a piece of parchment, yellowed with age. The handwriting was elegant but rushed. If you're reading this, you're likely marked for execution. Know this. House Nightborn's authority comes from their bloodline purity, but their current lady is not pureborn. She was turned, not born vampire. This information is leverage. Use it carefully, it could save you or damn you. Alara read it 3 times, her heart pounding. Leverage. But how could she use it without proof? And more importantly, who had left this message? Someone executed long ago? Someone who'd escaped? She returned the parchment to its hiding place and replaced the stone. Then she ate, avoiding the wine, and tried to form a plan. Hours passed. The fire burned low. She was starting to drift when she heard it. A sound at the window. Soft, deliberate, scratching. She crossed to the glass and looked out. At first, she saw nothing. Then a face appeared, hanging upside down from the roof. Castian. He looked terrible, pale as death, covered in half-healed wounds, his eyes burning with intensity. He pointed urgently at the window latch. Alara fumbled with the lock. The bars prevented the window from opening wide, but Castian twisted impossibly, slipping through the narrow gap like smoke. He dropped to the floor in a crouch, breathing hard. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. They'll catch you, I don't care. He straightened, wincing. I'm getting you out. How? The grounds are watched. There are hounds, I know. I killed 3 on my way in. His eyes met hers. But I can't carry you unconscious, and I can't fight my way through the entire house, so I need you to trust me, completely. What are you talking about? He pulled something from his coat, a small silver knife. I need to blood bond with you, properly. It's the only way to make you invisible to their tracking. Alara's breath caught. You said bonding was intimate. That you wouldn't, I lied. His voice was raw. I wanted to, but I can't protect you from outside these walls. If we're bonded, I can feel where you are, mask your presence, and when the trial comes, I can invoke ancient laws that even House Nightborn can't ignore. What laws? His smile was bitter. The law that says a bonded human is considered part of their vampire's house, untouchable except through formal challenge. He held out the knife. I'm asking you, Alara, will you trust me with your blood? She looked at the blade, then at his face, desperate, honest, afraid. 3 days until a trial designed to kill her, or 1 cut, and a chance at survival. What do I have to do? She asked. Relief flooded his expression. Cut your palm. Small cut. Then I drink, and you drink from me. You mean your blood? Yes. He saw her hesitation. It won't turn you. That requires intent and far more blood. This will just connect us. Alara took the knife. Her hand was shaking. If I do this, what changes? Everything, he said quietly. And nothing. You'll still be you, but you'll be mine to protect. And I'll be yours to call. He held her gaze. Forever, Alara, bonds don't break. Even in death. She thought of Dorian's smile. The trial. The certainty of execution. Then she drew the blade across her palm. Chapter 7. The Bond and the Seagoth. Blood welled dark against her pale skin. Castian's eyes tracked the movement with an intensity that should have frightened her. Instead, Alara felt strangely calm as she held out her hand. This was choice. This was agency. After weeks of feeling powerless, abandoned by Thomas, hunted by vampires, trapped in a gilded cage, she was finally deciding her own fate. Are you certain? His voice was strained. Once this is done, I'm certain. He took her hand gently, cradling it like something precious. His thumb brushed the edge of the cut, and she felt him shudder. Then he lowered his head and pressed his mouth to her palm. The sensation was unlike anything she'd expected. Not painful, almost the opposite. Warmth spread from the point of contact, flowing up her arm and into her chest. She felt his hunger, yes, but beneath it was something else. Reverence, gratitude, a loneliness so deep it made her ache. Is that what you feel? She thought. Every day? He pulled back, his eyes now completely black. Blood stained his lips. Your turn. He drew the silver knife across his own palm without hesitation. Dark blood, almost black in the firelight, pooled in his hand. He held it up to her. Alara hesitated for only a moment. Then she pressed her lips to his palm and drank. The taste was wrong. Copper and cold, and something ancient that her mind couldn't process. But the moment it touched her tongue, the world shifted. The room brightened. She could hear things she shouldn't be able to hear, heartbeats in distant rooms, footsteps 3 floors below, wind against stone. And underneath it all, a thread of connection that led directly to Castian. She could feel him, his pain, his determination. His fierce, protective need to keep her safe. Is this what you feel when you sense me? His voice in her head, warm and intimate. She gasped and pulled back. I can hear you. And I can feel you. He smiled, but it was edged with pain. Your fear, your courage, your stubborn refusal to give up, even when you should. His expression softened. You're extraordinary, Alara Thorne. Before she could respond, they both heard it. Raised voices from somewhere below. Shouts, running footsteps. They know I'm here. Castian moved to the window. The bond disrupted their wards. We need to move, now. How do we get past the hounds? They won't see you anymore. To them, you're just an extension of me. Another shadow. He turned back to her. But House Nightborn won't let this insult stand. They'll come with everything they have. As if summoned by his words, the door exploded inward. The woman vampire from before, the beautiful one with honey eyes, stood in the doorway. Behind her, 3 others, all of them radiating fury. Bold of you, Mornshadow, she said, her voice silk over razors. Breaking into a sovereign house, stealing marked property, blood bonding without court approval. Her smile was terrible. You've just declared war, then we're at war. Castian positioned himself between Alara and the vampires. She's House Mornshadow now, under my protection. You have no claim. We have every claim. The woman stepped into the room. That bond is illegal without court sanction. It will be dissolved, and you'll both face execution. Try it. They moved as one, a coordinated assault meant to overwhelm. But Castian was ready. He met them with brutal efficiency, using the room's confined space to his advantage. He caught the first vampire by the throat and slammed him into the wall hard enough to crack stone. Deflected the second strike, and sent her careening into the fireplace. But there were too many. The honey-eyed woman got past his guard, her hand closing around Alar's throat. There you are, she purred. Let's see how strong this bond really is. Pain exploded through Alar's neck. The woman's grip was iron, cutting off air. Black spots danced across her vision. She clawed uselessly at the vampire's hand. Then Castian screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It was rage and anguish and centuries of controlled violence finally breaking free. He crossed the room in a blur, tearing the woman away from Alara with such force that they crashed through the window. Glass shattered. Iron bars bent. They tumbled together into the night. 4 stories down, Alara gasped for air, her throat burning. The remaining vampires stared at the broken window in shock. He just won began. The bond, another whispered. It's stronger than it should be. He felt her pain like his own. Alara didn't wait to hear more. She ran, down the corridor, following the thread of connection that pulled her toward Castian. Behind her, footsteps, shouts, the entire house mobilizing. She took stairs 2 at a time, her lungs burning, the taste of his blood still on her tongue. She burst through a door and found herself in the gardens. Rain poured down, lightning split the sky, and there in the center of the courtyard, Castian fought like a king defending his throne. 6 vampires surrounded him. Blood streamed from wounds on his chest, his face, his arms. But he didn't stop, didn't slow. Every movement was precise, lethal, born of 200 years, ruling through strength. Alara saw the moment he started to falter. His next strike missed by inches. A vampire got behind him, claws raised to strike. She didn't think, just acted. She grabbed a broken piece of iron railing sharp and heavy and threw herself forward. The vampire turned too late. The iron caught him in the chest, and he shrieked, stumbling back. Iron couldn't kill them, but it burned, hurt them in ways other weapons didn't. Castian used the distraction. He caught the nearest vampire and twisted, the sound of breaking bone echoing across the courtyard. Another fell to his fist. A third retreated, fear finally overriding arrogance. Suddenly, Dorian was there. The seneschal stepped into the courtyard, and every vampire froze. Enough, his voice carried absolute authority. This has gone far enough. They broke our laws. The honey-eyed woman spat. Blood dripped from her mouth where Castian had struck her. And you broke hospitality by attacking a bonded pair. Dorian looked between Castian and Alara. The bond is witnessed. It holds, whether we approve or not. He adjusted his spectacles. Which means this dispute goes to the Night Court. As it should have from the beginning. The court will side with us, the woman said. Perhaps. Dorian's smile was enigmatic. But perhaps not. Mornshadow was king. That carries weight. And his bond appears to be. He studied them with disturbing interest. Unusually strong. Castian pulled Alara close, his arm around her waist. She could feel his exhaustion through the bond, the pain he was suppressing. 3 days, Dorian said. Until the court convenes. Both of you will attend. Failure to appear means immediate execution. He turned away. Go. Mourn Shadow. Before Lady Serafini herself decides to weigh in, Castian didn't need to be told twice. He swept Alara into his arms and ran impossibly fast, through the gardens, over the wall, into the rain-soaked streets beyond. She held onto him, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek, tasting his blood in her mouth, connected to him in ways she was only beginning to understand. I've got you, he whispered. I've got you. And for the first time in months, Alara believed it. Chapter 8. Aftermath and Reconnaissance didn't stop running until they reached the river. Castian finally set her down beneath a stone bridge, his breathing ragged despite not needing air. The rain had soaked them both through. His blood stained her dress. Through the bond, Alara could feel his pain like distant thunder, constant and wearing. You're hurt, she said. I'll heal. He leaned against the bridge support, eyes closed. Give me a moment. But she could feel the lie through their connection. Whatever injuries he'd sustained were severe. Vampire healing was fast, but not instantaneous, especially when the body was already depleted from days without feeding. You need blood, she said quietly, his eyes opened. No, Castian, I just bonded with you, fed from you. His voice was firm despite the exhaustion. Taking more would weaken you, make you vulnerable. I'm already vulnerable. She moved closer, rain dripping from her hair. And you can barely stand. What happens when they come for us again and you can't fight? They won't come. Not until the trial. He pushed off from the wall, wincing. Dorian invoked court law. Even House Nightborn has to respect that. You're sure? No, his smile was bitter. But it's the best chance we have. They made their way through the city in silence, keeping to shadows and empty streets. Alara's mind churned with everything that had happened. The bond, the fight. The way Castian had screamed when that vampire hurt her, a sound of pure agony, as if her pain had become his own. She realized. That's what the bond meant. They were connected now. Truly, irrevocably connected. What are you thinking? His voice broke through her thoughts. That I can feel you, she admitted. Your pain, your exhaustion, She stopped, unsure how to name the other things she sensed. Fear, guilt, something deeper that felt like devotion wrapped in thorns. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have warned you. The bond goes both ways. You'll feel my emotions, and I'll feel yours. There's no privacy anymore. No secrets. Is that why you resisted it for so long? He was silent for several steps. Then, partly, I've spent 50 years teaching myself to be alone, to not need anyone, to not. He stopped walking. To not feel this much. Feel what? He looked at her, and the vulnerability in his expression made her breath catch. Responsible, connected, terrified that I'll fail you the way I failed her, the woman you mentioned before. Yes, he resumed, walking, his jaw tight. Her name was Lyanna. She was human, kind, stubborn, brilliant. His voice cracked slightly. And I loved her more than I'd loved anything in 400 years. Alara's heart clenched. What happened? I was king. I thought my authority could protect her. I thought if I made her my consort, not turned her, just bonded her, the other houses would respect that boundary. He laughed bitterly. I was wrong. They saw her as weakness, leverage, and when I refused to execute a vampire who'd broken treaty, they took their retribution out on her. They killed her. They made me watch. His hands were shaking, held me with blood magic while they drained her, slowly, to teach me that kings don't get to be human, don't get to love. He stopped beneath a street lamp, rain streaming down his face. I abdicated the next day, walked away from the throne, but I was too late to save her. Alara understood now. The protective fury, the reluctance to bond, the way he'd fought an entire house single-handedly rather than let them hurt her. He was trying to rewrite history, to save this time what he couldn't save before. I'm not her, she said gently. I know that. Do you? She stepped closer. Because it feels like you're trying to protect a ghost instead of seeing the person standing in front of you. His eyes met hers, dark, ancient, filled with centuries of grief. I see you, Alara. I see your strength. Your courage, the way you threw yourself into a fight with vampires, armed with nothing but broken iron. His voice softened. I see you. And it terrifies me, Because I'm starting to care. And caring is what gets people killed, or caring is what keeps them alive. She reached up and touched his face, feeling the coldness of his skin. You saved me tonight, multiple times. Not because you're trying to fix the past, but because you chose to. We both chose this. Through the bond, she felt his resistance crumbling, felt the moment he stopped fighting and simply let himself feel the connection, the possibility, the terrifying hope that maybe this time could be different. The trial, he said finally. We need to prepare. House Nightborn will bring every law, every precedent, every piece of evidence they can manufacture. We need leverage. Alara thought of the message hidden in the wall. I might have something. His eyebrows rose. What? She told him about the parchment, about the claim that Lady Serafini wasn't pureborn, but turned. His expression shifted from surprise to something calculating. If that's true, he said slowly, it changes everything. Pure-born vampires have different rights, different standing in the court. If Serafini was turned, her house's authority is built on a lie, but we'd need proof. I know where to find it. He smiled, and it was sharp. The old records. Before houses learned to bury their secrets, everything was documented. Bloodlines, turnings, deaths. It's all there in the court archives. Can we access them? Not legally. His smile widened. But I spent 2 centuries as king. I know every entrance, every weak point, every guard rotation. He took her hand. How do you feel about breaking into the most secure location in vampire society? Despite everything, the exhaustion, the fear, the impossible situation, Alara found herself smiling back. When do we start? Tomorrow night. We'll need rest first. And I'll need to feed. He hesitated. From me, she finished. I'm offering Castian, freely. The conflict in his expression was painful to watch. But finally, he nodded. Tomorrow, when we're safe, when I can do it properly, without desperation. They made it back to his house as dawn approached. Alara fell into bed, still wearing her blood-stained dress, too exhausted to care. Through the bond, she felt Castian settle somewhere below, keeping watch. Sleep, his voice whispered in her mind. I'll keep you safe, and surrounded by his presence. She finally did. Chapter 9. Blood, Trust, and Old Losh woke to candlelight and the smell of tea. Castian sat in the chair by her window, silhouetted against the heavy curtains that blocked out the afternoon sun. He'd changed clothes, dark shirt, darker trousers, and cleaned the blood from his skin. But she could still feel the ache of his wounds through the bond. A persistent throb that wouldn't fully heal without feeding. You should have woken me, she said. Sitting up. You needed rest. He poured tea from a pot she hadn't noticed. We have hours before nightfall. Before we attempt what will likely be the most dangerous thing either of us has ever done. Alara accepted the cup, grateful for the warmth. You mean breaking into the court archives? Breaking in is the easy part. It's getting out alive that concerns me. He moved to stand by the fireplace, staring into flames that cast dancing shadows across his face. If we're caught, there's no trial, no debate, just execution. Immediate and public. Then we won't get caught. His smile was faint. Your confidence is admirable. Possibly misplaced, but admirable. She set down her tea and crossed to him. Up close, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself carefully. You're still in pain. It's manageable. Castian, she touched his arm. We have a bond now. I can feel it's not manageable. Stop lying to protect me. He closed his eyes. It's habit. Centuries of ruling meant never showing weakness, never admitting vulnerability. You're not a king anymore. No, he looked at her. I'm something far more dangerous. I'm a man who cares. The admission hung between them. Through the bond, Alara felt the truth of it, the way his careful control was fracturing, letting something warmer and more human bleed through. You need to feed, she said quietly. From me. Before we attempt this, Alara, we already discussed this. You can't fight on empty. You can't run if we need to escape. You can't protect me if you collapse from starvation. She held his gaze. And I trust you. Completely. The last word broke something in him. He turned away, gripping the mantle. You shouldn't. Trust me, I mean. I've already gotten you marked for death. Dragged you into a world that will consume you. Bonded you to a future where you'll watch everyone you know age and die while you remain tied to someone who sees me, she interrupted. Someone who doesn't treat my grief like a burden. Someone who risks everything to keep me safe. She moved to stand beside him. Thomas spent a year making me feel worthless. Like my sadness over losing my father was an inconvenience. You've spent 3 days treating me like I matter. You do matter. His voice was rough. More than you know. Then let me help you. He turned to face her fully. The firelight caught in his dark eyes, making them almost human. If I feed from you now, the bond will deepen. You'll feel me more clearly. See, memories I haven't shared. Experience, emotions I've buried for decades. His hand lifted, hesitant, before settling gently against her cheek. It's intimate, Alara. More intimate than most humans understand. And I need you to be certain. She leaned into his touch. I'm certain. Then sit. He gestured to the chair. This should be comfortable. Safe. She settled into the chair while he knelt before her. The position was deliberately vulnerable, him below her, giving her control. His hands rested gently on her knees. Your wrist, he said. It's less invasive than the neck. You'll feel warmth, possibly pleasure. If it becomes too much, if you want me to stop, just say so. She offered her wrist, pulse visible beneath pale skin. He held her arm carefully, his thumb tracing the vein. Then he pressed a kiss to her wrist, gentle, reverent, before his fangs descended. The sensation was nothing like before. No desperate hunger. No frantic need. This was controlled, careful, almost tender. Warmth spread from the bite point, flowing through her body like honey. She felt his relief as clearly as her own heartbeat, his gratitude, his fierce determination to take only what he needed and no more. But she also felt him. His memories rising like ghosts, a battlefield under a red moon, his first kill, the night he was turned. Lyanna's laugh, the weight of a crown, the loneliness of eternity. And beneath it all, something she hadn't expected, hope. Fragile and new, focused entirely on her. You make me remember what it feels like to want more than survival. His voice whispered through the bond. To want connection, purpose, a reason to keep fighting. She threaded her fingers through his hair, anchoring him. Then keep fighting. For both of us. He pulled back slowly, carefully sealing the wound with his tongue. The puncture marks faded almost immediately, leaving only faint marks. He stayed kneeling, his forehead resting against her knee. Thank you, he breathed. She felt the difference in him immediately, strength returning, wounds closing, the persistent ache finally easing. But more than that, she felt their connection solidify into something unbreakable. How do you feel? He asked. Strange, connected, like part of me is always aware of you now. She touched his shoulder. How do you feel? Stronger. He stood, moving with the fluid grace she'd first witnessed. Ready. He helped her to her feet. We have 2 hours until full dark. I'll explain the plan. He led her to a table covered in sketches, hand-drawn maps of a massive building. The courthouse sits at the city's center, 3 levels above ground. For below, the archives are in the lowest level, protected by blood wards and guard rotations. How do we get past the wards? I'm House Mornshadow. My blood still carries royal authority. The wards will recognize me, they have to, or the entire court system fails. He traced a route on the map. But recognition doesn't mean welcome. We'll trigger silent alarms. We'll have minutes, maybe less, before they respond. What are we looking for? Birth records. Turning records. Anything documenting Serafini Nightborn's origin. His finger stopped on a section marked restricted. Here, the sealed files. Everything. The houses don't want public. And if we find proof, then we have leverage. His smile was sharp. Enough to force a negotiation. House Nightborn's legitimacy depends on their pure bloodline. If we can prove their matriarch is turned, not born, their entire claim to upper house status crumbles. They'll deny it. They will. But doubt is enough. Once we introduce the evidence, the other houses will investigate. Nightborn will be forced to prove their legitimacy or face loss of standing. He rolled up the maps. Either way, you become too valuable to kill. A witness. Evidence. Ilara studied his face. This could start a war between houses. Yes, his expression was grim. But you'll be alive for it. That's all that matters to me. Through the bond, she felt his certainty. His willingness to burn down the entire vampire world if it meant keeping her safe. Then let's go start a war, she said. His smile was fierce and proud. That's my girl. And despite everything, despite the fear and the danger and the impossible odds, Alara felt something she hadn't felt in months, alive. Chapter 10. The Court of Broken Truths. Courthouse rose from the city center like a monument to eternal darkness, Alara had seen it before everyone had. It was impossible to miss, a Gothic cathedral of black marble and iron, perpetually shrouded in shadow, even during daylight. But she'd never understood what it truly was. The beating heart of vampire law. Where immortal politics had played out for 1,000 years, they approached from the east, using abandoned maintenance tunnels that smelled of mildew and old stone. Castian moved with absolute certainty, every turn memorized from lifetimes of walking these paths as king. The entrance is ahead, he whispered. Once we cross the threshold, stay close. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't make eye contact with anyone. And whatever happens, whatever you see, don't run. What am I going to see? His expression was grim. Things that will make you question whether I'm one of the monsters too. They emerged into a lower chamber, lit by phosphorescent crystals embedded in the walls. The air was thick with power, ancient, oppressive, watching. Alara felt the weight of it pressing down, making it hard to breathe. Castian placed his palm against a door covered in symbols. Blood welled from his hand. He'd cut it deliberately and the symbols flared red. The door swung open silently. The wards recognize you, Alara whispered, for now. But they're also announcing our presence. He pulled her forward. Move quickly. They descended deeper. The walls changed from work stone to raw rock, the passages narrowing. Alara heard sounds echoing from somewhere above, voices, footsteps, the strange harmonics of vampire communication that existed just beyond human hearing. The archive chamber was vast. Shelves stretched into shadow, lined with books, scrolls, and records bound in leather that looked like skin. The air smelled of preservation, spells, and time. Here, Castian moved to a section marked with House Nightborn's crest, a serpent coiled around a crescent moon. His fingers flew over spines, reading titles too faded for Alara to make out. Birth records, turning records, bloodline documentation. He pulled a heavy tome from the shelf. This one. He opened it on a reading table, pages crackling. The text was in a language Alara didn't recognize, but Castian read fluently, his finger tracing lines, his expression growing darker. What does it say? She asked. Lady Serafini Nightborn, born. He stopped. No, not born. Turned. In 1723, by Lord Marcus Nightborn, who claimed her as progeny to preserve his bloodline after his natural heirs were killed in the Purge Wars. So it's true. She's not pure-born. It's more than that. Castian turned pages, reading faster. The records were altered. See these marks? Amendments made decades later. Someone tried to rewrite history, make it appear she was born vampire. But the original documentation contradicts it. He looked up. This is forgery, fraud, a violation of the oldest court laws. Can we prove it? We can. The voice came from everywhere at once. Remove the documents from this chamber, and you sign your own execution warrant. Dorian Ashcroft stepped from the shadows as if he'd been part of them. His spectacles gleamed in the crystal light. Behind him, 3 other vampires emerged, members of the court guard, their expressions carved from stone. Castian positioned himself between Alara and the newcomers. Dorian, I should have known you'd be watching. The archives are monitored, Mornshadow. You knew that. Dorian approached the table, glancing at the open tome. His eyebrows rose fractionally. Ah, Nightborn's secret. I wondered when someone would finally look. You knew? Castian's voice was deadly quiet. Of course I knew. I'm the seneschal. It's my business to know where every house's skeletons are buried. He closed the book carefully. But knowing and proving are different matters. And what you're attempting is treason. What we're attempting is justice. Justice. Dorian smiled. Such a mortal concept. We deal in power, Mornshadow. Always have. Nightborn's bloodline may be fraudulent, but they've held authority for 3 centuries. Exposing them now would destabilize 5 houses, possibly trigger succession wars, and definitely result in thousands of deaths, vampire and human. Better than letting an innocent woman die for their political convenience. Castian growled. Is she innocent? Dorian's gaze shifted to Alara. She interfered with a vampire's death, extended suffering that was meant to end, disrupted carefully balanced alliances. And now, she's bonded to a fallen king and breaking into sacred archives. He tilted his head. That's quite a lot of chaos for one mortal. Alara found her voice. I didn't mean to cause any of this. I just helped someone who was suffering. Intent is irrelevant, my dear. Impact is what matters. Dorian adjusted his spectacles. However, I find myself in an unusual position. I could arrest you both right now. present you to the court tomorrow for execution. It would be clean, simple, politically expedient. But Castian's hand moved toward a weapon Alara couldn't see. But I'm curious. Dorian smiled. You were a good king, Mornshadow. Fair, strategic. You walked away because you couldn't stomach the compromises, and part of me has always wondered if that was weakness or wisdom. He gestured to the book. This evidence could destroy House Nightborn. It could also start a war that burns this city to ash. What will you do with it? Negotiate. Castian's voice was steady. Nightborn wants to maintain their status. We want Alara's life. With this evidence, we have leverage. And if they refuse? If they decide killing you both is worth the risk of exposure? Then I make the evidence public. Let the houses tear each other apart, fighting over the scraps. Dorian laughed a genuine sound of delight. There's the king. I remember. Ruthless when necessary. He gestured to the guards. Let them take the book, but escort them to the surface. If they're going to destroy vampire society, they should do it properly. In the court itself. Tomorrow night. You're letting us go? Alara couldn't believe it. I'm giving you a chance. Dorian's expression grew serious. The trial is tomorrow at midnight. You'll present your evidence before the full court. House Nightborn will defend themselves. The assembled houses will vote on your fate. He looked at Castian. No more running. No more hiding. You stand before your peers and you fight. And if we lose, then you die together. Which, given the bond between you, is probably what you'd choose anyway. Dorian turned away. Guards? Escort them out. And Mornshadow? Yes? Welcome back to politics. I've missed having a worthy opponent. They were led through different tunnels, emerging near Castian's house as dawn approached. The moment they were alone, Alara turned to him. Did we just win or lose? Both? He clutched the book tightly. We have evidence. But tomorrow we face every vampire house in the territory. In open court, where anything can happen. What are our chances? He pulled her close, the bond humming between them. Honestly, maybe 30%. That's not very encouraging. No, his smile was tired. But I've survived worse odds. And I've never had something worth fighting for like I do now. Through the bond, she felt his truth, his determination, his willingness to burn everything down if it meant she survived. Then we fight, she said. Together, together, he agreed. And as the sun rose over the city, they held each other and prepared for the battle that would decide not just their fate, but the fate of every human and vampire in the territory. The trial was coming, and one way or another, everything would change.